again. Now we're going for a fun one. We're going for a big silly episode, which is I'm going to go here because I went the wrong side. The Ishiro Honda double bill. What have we got? The H-Man and Battle in Outer Space. We've also got Mothra. It was also released the same day. I haven't rewatched. I've already seen Mothra. I'm sure I covered it in the Godzilla set. I might redo it again. Mothra I rebought as well, even though I had it in Steelbook. It's a very lovely Steelbook, and also the new Eureka set's really nice too, with some few more extras. So, but I think I've already covered Mothra a bit. But I have not covered these two. Now, Ishiro Honda directed Godzilla as well. I mean, he did quite a few of the Godzillas. He started the Godzilla thing and he continued through to like Godzilla vs King Kong and all the rest of it. He was he was kind of like for monster movies, he was like Terence Fisher was to Hammer. He was that for Toho for Godzilla. So he was a guy who started a lot of them, did a lot of the definite versions that people still look back on fondly, and had a certain style he set up from the 50s. He was kind of journeyman director, but he had a sense of style about him. So there might be other filmmakers who did something really unique, but no one was as consistently good as Honda. They started off doing other kind of films. They started off as an assistant and worked his way up. Early on he was doing different types of films, which he also wrote, but he quickly became a monster movie expert because his monster movies are the ones that made the money. And it was kind of like, he gave me a type because that's what he did that did well. It was like, well, he does those movies, let him do those movies. Let's make money off him there. And the other stuff, leave it to other people. Just let him do the big monster fights because he does what people want to see. A big thing was he was also a lifelong friend of Akira Kurosawa. He actually, after his career ended as a director, he went and actually was creative consultant to Kurosawa in the 80s with Ran and things like that. And also shot certain things for Kurosawa. Kurosawa was ill, and he would shoot certain things for them because he trusted him so much. So he was a creative force for Kurosawa too in later years. So literally when he stopped directing films, he actually moved into... He went from feature films to TV, then to work with Kurosawa. You know. And as a kind of director, you can see his... Like, even though these were assignments from Toho, you can see that he found his way through them to do his own movies. And he seemed to be enjoying... It's that thing where you can tell a director enjoying the movies because he's having fun with certain things. Even if the films sometimes have the dodgier scripts, he's finding something through them, you know. Because he never always had the best scripts, but he gave a lot of the films a sense of personality, a sense that he was invested in them in some way that makes you want to watch a film. That's the big problem with the film is if somebody watching a film you're like, I'm not sure the director really cares that much. That's really defeatist for a viewer. Even if it's a director who's maybe not passionate, he finds ways to be passionate. Honda was really good at that. Same with Terence Fisher was as well. Like through Gothics and Hammer, he always found something there that he could latch onto to make himself interested. So these two films, these are two of the less famous films. They're not the Godzilla films. They're not like the Mothra film, the Rodan. These are the like, minor stuff. But in some ways they're more interesting than the films he made that were more famous. Like the H-Man for a start. The H-Man is very much more in the Quatermass mode. And this was made at the same time as Quatermass. It's not as intelligent as Quatermass Experiment or Quatermass in the Pit. It doesn't have that little spark of genius that those films have, or those stories have. But it is really enjoyable. And it is like a revenge of the nuclear atom type of thing. It is that thing of the terror of nuclear threat you get a lot in the 50s in America. And Honda was a guy who did it to Japan. Honda was a guy who was scared of nukes. Obviously, since his country had been nuked twice, he obviously had a legitimate fear of that. And this one is pretty much... It's a silly premise, but the way he does it makes it work. The idea is these... You see, this shit that was in a radiation field, the people in it turn out to have melted. Their bodies have melted when they get hit by rain, by water. It seems they've done something to their bodies. But within that, these creatures are green, which you can see the picture emerge, and it's almost like they've been turned into an archival creature who has memories of those downed people who are out for revenge, who are really mad. Maybe they're just working on instincts, but they're coming back to Tokyo, and for a while no one understands what's going on. So the first half of the movie is about the criminals and stealing nuclear energy and what's happened there, and then eventually the monsters show up and all hell breaks loose. The police have to deal with the monsters and realise that everything they thought was going on in this case, which they thought was crime, was not the case. It was just their mistakes. What's really cool about this film, which is not as good as the other one, I like Battle in Outer Space better, but what's really cool with this one is it is like two movies that squashed together. So you do have a crime movie, a very much traditional Japanese crime movie, which I really enjoy those movies. They've got a kind of, this is way more like the 60s version, but it's still that the police bring in the criminals and try and investigate, and you've got the grumpy guy in charge, and you've got different people, some experienced, some not, and they're trying to work out what's going on. But you know there's something more supernatural when they're not listening, and they're actually going through all these sleazy nightclubs trying to work it out. So you can have a crime movie in the midst of this monster movie. And the way they mix it together, it's almost like a weird dreamlike quality, because it's like two different sort of dreams coming together, and it's really wonderful to watch because they don't really fit together. It's almost like the cop stuff's a padding, because there's only so many effects they can use for each man, and there's only so much time they can wander around these ships and seeing these infections, so they have to have another plot. So that plot doesn't quite all tie together, but creates this wonderful atmosphere for the film that is really wonderful and very enjoyable to watch. So you get some wonderful scenes that Honda does great, wandering around ships and seeing the people melt, and then seeing people come up as green creatures, kind of this ghostly presence that's also physical. And it sort of anticipates Ghostbusters in a way. And then, the green ghost figures, and then you finally get them attacking Tokyo and the nightclubs in Tokyo, and they see the nightclubs. All of that's great. But you also have them doing chases through the sewers, which is very much like them. There's lots of stuff that keeps repeating these kind of films. Like where can the monsters hide? And eventually they figure out they can burn the infection of the green, and they have to actually burn half the city, which creates this amazing sequence at the end where you see all these flames. You can see the river on fire, and it's just gorgeous. So that's a film more of imagery than cohesive plot. But the imagery is so good, the weird mix of genres is so good, it's really interesting and enjoyable, and I'd highly recommend it because it just works so well. Now, Battle in Outer Space is a very different kind of film. H-Man is about Earth-based threats. It's our problems with nuclear radiation that's caused it. It's a natural threat, we have to deal with it. And we have to deal with our own corruption to get to it, because you have lots of characters that are acting selfishly. In this case, the outside threats, aliens, come from another planet, they've landed on the moon, they're sending these things to attack us, and the world has to come together to defeat them, and have to set up rocket ships to attack them on the moon, to go in, land on the moon, and then travel to their base and blow up their base. So it's pretty much it's done in the 50s, but it's set in 1967. And there's some stuff that you would see other people use. But as you can see from the photograph, it's obviously models. And the models for the ships, that the things that go along the moon look like hot dogs. Japanese can be wonderfully weird at times. It's a really interesting culture for this kind of stuff. They like certain imagery, and sometimes it's like, that's odd, but kind of wonderful. So the first half is basically the setup of the threat. Basically, the aliens are attacking, they've blown stuff up, they've infiltrated our institutions, and they've brainwashed certain people to do things. They'll try to blow us up, they'll try to sabotage us. We stop that and we realise we have to go and defeat them. We can't let these flying saucers come in and blow our stations up. There's a space station at the beginning. It pretty much looks very similar to the space station you get in 2001 with the orbit thing for the to create gravity. Now the idea with so the thing with this film is sometimes they use science and sometimes they don't, because they have scientific plans for certain things. The idea of you're moving around this thing and so what you're looking at can you catch them and you're not catching them. All that stuff's really cool, and then you get crazy stuff that's not very scientific. The idea of what happens in like zero gravity is people walk normally. They mention gravity, the lack of gravity, so you'll be a bit weird at times, and then they completely ignore it. That's just the way it is. You get used to it. So the first half is they set up, and then you see them building these ships. These two spaceships are going to go up into space. They have to deal with asteroids coming at them to blow them up, these lasers. There's a very Buck Rogers feel to it, but it's wonderful. Then they land on the moon, so they have to turn the ships around in this very, very old-fashioned way, and it looks very weird, but kind of wonderful. Very old-fashioned effects, and if you like those kind of effects, you're going to have a great time with this. Because with models, sometimes you can see the wires like blatantly, but it doesn't matter, because it's fun. They land on the ship. There was someone trying to sabotage them. One of the scientists has been brainwashed, and he's trying to sabotage and blow up the ships and things. And they have to tie him down. They'd have to go out and try and find out where the mothership is and where the base is. And they have to go in these little, things. These little hot dogs. They can fire lasers as they're going. So you have a fight between those things, those little hot dogs, versus flying saucers at some point as they try to escape. You've also got sabotage the ship. There's some nice moments where the set has turned from being this, doing this. So instead of having to just walk, because where the ship's landing, they have to climb up these ladders to get to the same place. Which is a nice bit of logic for the design, where they actually take into account direction and things. So there's lots of things like that really work nicely, like things that are sets or one way and then go this way, and it creates other problems for the characters. There's also lots and lots of laser battles. Lots of lasers blowing stuff up and destroying stuff, and there's plenty of escapes. Then finally, as the film goes on, they have to find a way back to Earth and have a giant fight with rocket ships that have been set up to go into space to fight against flying saucers. Which is a very Star Wars sequence well before Star Wars. And it's kind of wonderful because it is like, it's not anywhere near as good as Star Wars, but it's kind of enjoyable because it reminds you of Star Wars, because it's the same idea of doing a space fight that actually looks like an airplane fight. There's other sequences that remind you of other films. I mean, Michael Bay must have loved this film, because there's one bit where you see New York has been trashed by asteroids, and then you see San Francisco trashed, and there was one image that looks very much like Independence Day. But the asteroids attacking like other cities feels very Armageddon. There's another bit that's very Transformer-like, where basically there's a bit where the mothership pulls the gravity, so it pulls up all these buildings and objects, then just drops them, which happened in one of the Transformers films too. So Michael Bay might have seen this film. It's astonishingly close to it. And honestly, I like it better in this film because it's less show-offy. It's more charming. This is a blast, though. This is silliness at its best. Hour and a half long. Didn't outstay its welcome. You get lots of retro special effects from Japan. It's so enjoyable. You're going to love this one or hate it. There's no in between. I mean, objectively, it's not that great a film, but there's a lot of enthusiasm. People are having fun making it, and I had a hell of a lot of fun watching it, so I have nothing else to say beyond just go see it. It's great. Both these films are so much fun. Hour and a half long each. You're going to have a great time watching them. Just enjoy. Just have a good time and don't think too much about them. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll take my recommendation, and I'll be back soon with another video. Right, bye for now.